What is the difference between these scenes
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, they vote. Oh yes, they vote. Oh yes, they vote.
Oh yeah.
The gun, the gun, the gun. Oh yeah.
and this scene? This is the first musical number in Wicked, and from that very moment I knew we were witnessing the most tragic waste of an adaptation in history of musical films. This opening number is lacking in everything that makes a musical scene exciting, pleasing, fun, or emotional. There is no conscious camera blocking, frame composition, or editing with intention. It's not stimulating, and not being stimulating is the literal worst scenario for a musical theater or film experience. And most importantly, there is no visual and sensory synchrony with the music. Musical theater is a medium of interlaced stimuli. There's so much happening on stage that you can actually choose what to pay attention to, even if the scene's blocking highlights a particular element. And all these stimuli work together on stage for something the audience perceive as sensory synchrony. Sensory synchrony would be the conscious sync of every element on stage, like how the lighting changes when the chorus drops, the ensemble making shapes and movements in the background along a melody, movements in sync with music, whole scenographies changing along the rhythm. This sensory synchrony is the most satisfying part of the musical theater experience. That's why it is a medium of constant crescendos building toward peak moments, like the entire construction of Elphaba taking flight at the end of Act 1. And that's why most songs are built to land on a deeply satisfying, explosive final chorus. Directing musical theater requires a deep understanding of expectation, how every element contributes to an eventual explosion. Translated into film, this concept becomes something closer to the expectation built in a Western standoff, a Hitchcockian suspense scene, or a triumphant Allied cavalry arrival. Let's see how in this scene from The Batman, Matt Reeves builds momentum for the Batmobile reveal. The editing cuts between the car and the villain, there's a dolly in, a rising growl of the engine, and we can see the growing fear in Colin Farrell's eyes. All that expectation releases into the ignition burst that launches the chase. That is good directing. You can read the intention behind every decision. And it's the same with the sensory stimuli in musical theater momentum. Now, cinema is not theater, obviously. Its grammar is more specific and contained. The director controls the viewer's gaze differently. They decide whether we see the whole stage or just a fragment. But as we saw with film examples of momentum and expectation, nothing prevents a musical from using cinematic grammar to build the same kind of stimuli.
Gentlemen.
That's why musical adaptations, or any musical really, are exciting. You get to see all these new creative possibilities from different directors. Like, if the musical number is big and spectacular, maybe you film it with wide shots and clever camera blocking, just to honor that spectacular nature. But if you have specific details to highlight, like acting, you use close-ups or medium shots. If you want to emphasize movement, rhythm, a certain pacing, or tell a story in different spaces, you do it with editing. And if you want to make a super narrative number, you always do it in sync with the song. If the music has leitmotifs, it's a possibility for the director to also establish visual motives. Like how Steven Spielberg foreshadows the tragedy in West Side Story with the fire stairs representing cages in the framing during Tonight, and then ending the film with that same visual motive. That would be the highest appropriation of the medium to tell a musical story. Chicago is a miraculous film adaptation, one that's even better than the stage show, and the reason is... It's imaginative. It proposes a grammar made possible only through film. It transforms the stage concept into a representation that, ironically, is even more spectacular, reminiscent of the theater's overwhelming experience. And with all that, it better communicates the song's purpose. This number tells a micro-narrative about how the protagonist's lawyer manipulates the press into telling a tragic, victimizing story that makes his guilty client seem innocent. This scene is a masterclass in editing, again, something that can only exist in film.
I bet you want to know why I shot the bastard.
Shut up, Tommy.
It perfectly establishes the imaginary space and the real one by using the axis of action. And by doing that, it visually shows Billy Flynn's success in manipulating the press by changing them to his side of the axis and making them complicit in the stage number, eventually intercutting the consequences of the imaginary number in the real world during the song's climax. Every cut is in sync with the rhythm and movement of the actors.
Play for fun. That's the thought that...
It's a balance respecting classic wide theatrical compositions and framing, with the closer fast-paced, surgical, character-focused shots only doable in film. There's visual intention. Going back to Wicked's musical number, well, it has nothing of this. The editing is arbitrary, the framing doesn't emphasize the staging, there's no harmony in the ensemble, there's no breathing space to appreciate some camera blocking. Even the chosen shots undermine the choreography. Why have an ensemble holding roses, something visually striking if put harmoniously in a wide shot, if the shot we get is a tight medium shot of Glinda? Why are ensemble movements blurred out, doing some dancing we can't see? And why do the few wide shots that let us appreciate the scope of the staging and scenography last 3 seconds and aren't even composed with ensemble as the main visual subject? The whole number feels like watching a spectacle the camera is deliberately running away from. Let's compare it to Masquerade from Joel Schumacher's Phantom of the Opera, a directing that lets the number breathe and develop. Cuts with intention, motivated by rhythm and movement. It never forgets that this is supposed to be a spectacle and even manages to convey the subtext of frivolity these aristocrats embody through choreography and camera movement and angles. And the climatic segment is loyal to the theater staging, a wide open shot that lets us savor all elements interacting together. This song doesn't build any sensory synchrony or momentum or expectation because it's not telling a story along the musical number. It only cares to show Glinda's reaction shots cause that's the obvious subtext and content. She is feeling guilt, but those shots have no other meaning or intention. It's just Ariana's acting. There is no grammar, code or story being set up here. It's coverage just to illustrate. I mean, I've seen fan films in YouTube with better storytelling for this song. And this is a constant for almost every musical number. There's no grammar and no intention whatsoever. And the worst part is that it turns a fun, enchanting musical into something that is sometimes boring to watch. For example, The Wizard and I. That's the I Want song of the musical, the one that reveals the character's motivations, introduces Elphaba's leitmotif and sets her off pursuing what she wants. And sure, it's a monologue song, but it didn't have to be this boring, because what is this?
No sister acts ashamed. My future is...
This song visually tells us nothing. The I Want song, or any monologue song, can be just as moving as any large-scale musical number when directed well. even if it's a tragic subversion that is done in one take, as long as the performer can evolve the emotion of the scene.
Different from this hell I'm living.
The thing is, Wicked simply isn't clever. The only fun, dynamic numbers are What Is This Feeling and Defying Gravity.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
What makes me angry about Wicked as a lover of musicals and musical films is how little effort went into making it an actual musical movie, how little wit and inventiveness there is behind it. Because you can have good production design and big budgets, but ingenuity and creativeness is the fun part, the exciting part to watch. And it's obvious the mentality here was that the musical is good enough that the visuals don't need to be that clever. They illustrated the songs and call it a day. And honestly, that's not enough. The way this adaptation was approached, its Disney Plus aesthetic, the way nothing feels real or tangible, the bad VFX, the bad lighting, it's all so safe and flat that it makes me angry, because it's a wasted bullet. People say The Lord of the Rings was made at exactly the right time, not before, not after. It was made at the perfect moment to become the best possible adaptation. Something so solid it's untouchable and unrepeatable. Wicked, on the other hand, was made at the worst possible moment. Just imagine what this movie could have been in another context. The real tragedy of this film isn't Elphaba or Glindas. It's that Wicked, even with this great casting, was made at the wrong time, with the wrong mentality, and by the wrong filmmaker.